So I do want to move to this article, and I'm going to put like 45,000 disclaimers on it regarding Jaylen Brown, only because I know there's going to be a bunch of people who won't read it at all, and will think this is, oh, here we go. And there'll be a bunch of people who read it and be like, I don't see that. This isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about you're looking for signs on whether or not somebody is happy here, is comfortable here, wants to continue here. Jaylen Brown's been pretty vague about it throughout. Everyone wants to kind of feel good that like he's definitely coming back, right? Sure, he's coming back, and say things along the lines of like, "Oh, why would he want to leave? He's here with Tatum; they can win, and X, Y, and Z." I think there's more to what Jaylen Brown wants out of life and out of his basketball career than what people are kind of assuming that is.
The Garden Report is brought to you by FanDuel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet.
And again, Sherrod, if you did get a chance to read it, I want before I kind of go piece by piece your comments, my general takeaway here is there wasn't anything in this article that made you feel that he was absolutely set and pleased with the overall situation in Boston, both as a city. I didn't really crap on the basketball side of things, but he's not gushing about it either. But certainly his comments about Boston and what it's like being a black athlete in Boston, his experiences and whether he's seeing any improvements, makes you think that he's not super set on being here in the long run.
Well, I don't think he is. I think he's open-minded to the process. I think when the time comes, he's going to look at all options. And everything. And to be frank with you, he should. I mean, this is a young man who has an approach to this game that's unique for most players. It's not about one or two things. It's a multitude of things that he's going to weigh and consider. And the thing is, none of us really know what his pecking order or preferences are. If it's winning and being in the best situation to do that, then it's a pretty easy, no-brainer type of situation with what he has. If he's looking for a city that has a more cultural, diverse aspect, blueprint to it, he may look to go out somewhere else. But the one thing we do know that's not going to be a factor is the money. He's going to get the money wherever he goes. And so that's the one thing that you can just kind of take off the plate of considerations. But Jaylen is going to do what is going to make the most sense for him, because when you look at the way he has just gone about his entire career, there's been a clear, undeniable thought process that went into it. I mean, think about it. He was one of the best basketball players in the country coming out of high school, and he goes to Cal. Which at the time it's not a basketball power or mecca or anything like that, but there were certain things that institution had that he gravitated towards that made that the right place for him to be at that time. It's going to be the same thing when he comes time to make a decision on whether he stays in Boston or goes somewhere else.
Yeah, I always like listening to Jaylen on these things, and there's obviously quite a few interesting passages in here about his experience in Boston, and I don't love the fact that for whatever reason, I feel like Jaylen feels the need to be a little more guarded and vague, I think, and sometimes how he describes things, whether that's for fear of criticism or whatever it might be. I thought he kind of didn't dive deep into a ton in here, particularly his future in Boston. The Tatum question, he left kind of up in the air, same as it's always been. And then, of course, I don't think he really dove into specifics about ways he's been kind of boxed out business-wise in the city, which is honestly, if we're looking for signs about discomfort in Boston, the most concerning thing you're looking at.
Well, I mean, look, that's one that jumps out off the page.
I mean, didn't he mention he had trouble getting a house in this too?
Multiple experiences as an athlete, as a basketball player, regular civilian, start a business, trying to do things in the community. There's not a lot of room for people of color, black entrepreneurs to come in and start business. My experience there has not been as fluid as I would have liked. Even as an athlete, you would think that you get a certain amount of influence to be able to have experience, to be able to have some things, doors open easier. But even with me being who I am, trying to start a business, trying to buy a house, trying to do certain things.
I mean, right there,
you're running into adversity. So, I mean, he's telling you right now, he's running into racist roadblocks, trying to do things, even despite the fact that he has tremendous profile stature and a great deal of respect from a huge swath of the Celtics fan base and of the people of Boston. And I think, honestly, like around I mean, more cities than just Boston in terms of who he is, and still is running into issues here and him saying it's not as good as I would have thought by now. A lot of the things he alluded to is I'm not seeing the change I thought I would see. I'm not seeing the progress, the progression. I'm not seeing. I've been working at it, and I've been working in this community, and I'm still seeing this stuff, and that definitely has to make you wonder, whether or not this is a place that he wants to continue to call home.
Yeah, and I but again, the thing that I keep coming back to with all the stuff we're talking about and all the stuff that he's saying is that there's a certain amount of thought that's going to go into his final decision that I don't know if most athletes think about. I think they typically, is it a cool city? Am I getting paid? That's it. Are they a good team? But Jaylen, clearly there are other factors that come into play that he's going to weigh. And only Jaylen knows how much stock to put in those factors.
Yeah.
But again, some of the issues that you're talking about, John, are issues that whether it's Boston or 15, 20 other NBA cities, he's probably going to run into similar issues.
Sure.
And I think that's part of this whole conversation that I think sometimes doesn't necessarily get the attention that it should. That these are issues that aren't just Boston-centric issues. They have much deeper, much wider tentacles across this country than just one city.
He talked about that too, just in terms of whether or not things have improved just with some of the attention given to policing. And he said, no, not at all. Like,
I agree.
Deep systemic problem. Talked about education is something he's talked about a great deal, about, just the resources being given in urban communities. And that continues to be an issue, not improvement there. And that's nationwide, not Boston. So that is fair. The other stuff, just leaving that, because you're right, Sherrod, these are problems that could be multiple places, but let's just focus it on things pertaining to the Celtics in general, right? And these were the other couple of questions that were asked, and it's kind of like, okay, great. Like, what's your relationship? You and Tatum have played your entire careers. How would you describe your relationship today? Now, what do you want to hear him say? I love this guy, man. We've been together, and we're going to stay together until we win a championship.
You think there's some fatigue in that question?
There is, but that's what you want to hear. But an answer like this, I would say the same as it's always been. Two guys who work really hard, who care about winning. We come out, are extremely competitive. People probably still don't think it'll work out, but for the most part, it's been rarefied air. He's asked about a relationship, and he's talking about that they're both good basketball players who work hard. Like, you have to try really hard or really dislike somebody to not be able to say one thing that makes you think that you like that person. It's not that hard.
Sherrod, if I asked you what you think of John, what would you say?
The best.
Yeah. He'd say it's the same as it's been. He's a hard worker. Imagine that. Imagine you ask Sherrod, what do you think of John? He's like, he's a hard worker. I think about him about the same as I've always thought about him. And I know a lot of people out there probably think, we're not going to work out together, but I don't know. Who knows?
It's rarefied air.
Who knows? Yeah.
But I think, Bobby, it goes back to your earlier comment about just fatigue.
Yeah.
Because he's been asked that question a million times.
Fair.
And I don't know if I would give you just the expected answer that you're looking for.
Yeah, he doesn't want to feed into it. And this is what I'm talking about.
He doesn't want to give it up.
There's a lot about this interview that's very political, political in terms of his answers, guarded, held back. I wish he dove deeper into the Boston stuff. I know Sopan
Sherrod, am I grumpy? Tell them.
No, that's the funny part. He's like never grumpy
guy in the world.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. Same as it's always been.
Same, just rarefied air.
Oh man,
that needs to be on the. Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
What do you say? I'm trying to think of what Tatum always says when he gets the answer to the question. It's very similar. Like, yeah, we've been here together with each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, they love saying that.
Yeah.
They're right.
But there was another one here with the asked about Kanye, and
that was a problem.
Yay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which part in particular, Sherrod?
Well, just the whole, Jaylen. When he initially commented on that, he didn't really know exactly where Kanye was in his spiel, and when he found out, it was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
we need to cut ties like now, and he did. So that was one where Jaylen, he just needed to pause for another second or two, get a little bit of research, understand what you're being asked about, and then respond. But for a guy that young who has been as comfortable tackling subjects that most young guys aren't, uh, he's due for a misstep every now and then. And that was definitely one that he had. And I thought he did a good job of just cleaning that up when he could.
Yeah, no, but that was fine. But we asked about the Kanye influence, and he said, kind of like he supported some things that you were outspoken against, politically or whatever. And, and he said basically along the lines of, well, I don't have to agree with everything everybody says. I don't think the same as, he just said outright, I don't think the same as Celtics owners Steve Paliuka and Wick Rousebeck on a lot of different issues. I was like, but that doesn't mean we can't come together and win a championship. So again, nothing here is damning. Some of the stuff is stuff he's talked about before, but as you said, a little bit of fatigue. Some of the stuff is vague. Some of the stuff is not, doesn't want to be cornered or pigeonholed with a particular answer or committing to one thing or another. But then again, I don't really understand why give the interview if you're not willing to say stuff. But again, none of it was like, of course I want to be here. Of course I this, of course I that. You're looking for those assurances as you're going to enter a contract year, and you're not getting them in a forum like this, which is fine. But you're not getting them like from people close to him, people talking to him. No one has a good sense. What were you going to say, Sherrod?
John, if there's one thing that Kyrie Irving has taught us all, is those commitments are absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
And I think Jaylen, who, as we know, and he's talked about this before, him and Kyrie get along so much better now that they're not teammates. I think one of the understandings that he has learned from Kyrie is you don't show your hand. This is a business, and you need to play your cards close to the vest. And I think that's what Jaylen's doing. I think he has a pretty good idea of what he wants to do with his future going forward, but he's not going to let the world know about that just yet because he doesn't have to.
I'd be stunned if he didn't sign a $300 million deal. And I'd be concerned, of course, at that point. I think if he passed up a supermax, you would have to move to trade him.
If he gets a supermax, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Bobby. Here's the thing that I think we sometimes lose sight of. And I go back to when Bill Russell played for the Celtics. Bill Russell didn't have any issues really with the Celtics. It was the fan base. It was the people in the community that were problematic.
And he mentions the fan base in this too.
And when you listen to Jaylen talk, it's very similar.
Yeah.
So I would be more concerned if Jaylen were talking about roster issues and decisions made by management and things like that. That would be concerning because those are things that you can't easily address. Those are things that you can, or I should say, from Jaylen's perspective, you could easily distance yourself from with no problem, and people would understand why. So I think ultimately, as long as that is in good shape, like the money's right and they're putting the right pieces in place around him, and the basketball side of things with the Celtics is in solid, formidable shape, I don't think he's going to have a major problem staying in Boston.